Good morning and welcome to the Investment Migration Report.
This morning, we have the pleasure of having Lance Lee, who's a former EB-5 investor and now U.S. citizen, join us on the show. Welcome, Lance. It's great to have you here.
Thank you, Abteen. Thank you, Preeya, for having me here.
So, Lance, you have an incredible story. You were an EB-5 investor. You became a U.S. citizen through the program, picked the right project, got paid back on that project, worked for developers, worked for an agent in China, became one of the leading agents in that institution. And you've basically seen it from every angle of the EB-5 program. So we'd love to have you just tell us a little bit more about your experiences. And I know our audience at home that are trying to decide on what investment migration program to choose or what EB-5 project to choose, when the EB-5 does come back, whether it's direct or indirect, they would love to hear your point of view. So why don't we get started first with how did you decide on what country you were going to migrate to? And how was that decision process? Please share that with us.
Okay, so actually, I chose the United States because I was a student here. So in 2008, I came here as an international student. As you all know, we all remember 2008, we had a financial crisis. And when I graduated in 2010, it was actually quite hard for everybody, including American citizens, to find jobs. So at the time, we were thinking, so if I want to stay in this country, what will help me? What will help me? So of course, I can go through H-1B and all that, but my family decides if I have the residency, the permanent residency over here, it will be much easier, for me to find a job. So basically, that's where it came from. So in terms of getting a foreign residency, we did think about Hong Kong and the United States. But I really loved my time here in the United States, and I wanted to stay here. So it just became a no-brainer. I decided on EB-5.
I can really relate to you because I'm a Canadian citizen, so I was an international student as well. And I graduated in 2008, which was the worst time ever to graduate. And then I graduated my master's in 2010. So I completely understand where you're coming from. So I think it was a great move for you to do the EB-5 program and gain your residency if the U.S. is where you wanted to stay. Now, one of the most important things that investors have to look at is the project and where they're going to invest their money. Can you share a little bit with us about how you evaluated the various options you had in terms of your investment, what tools you might have used to evaluate and pick the right project?
Yeah, sure. So actually, my experience might be different from a lot of others because I did not use the agent. Actually, at the time, I didn't even know there are so many agents out there, whether it's in the United States or in China. So my whole EB-5 journey started with Google click. So Google, I started with America or USA investment immigration. Then EB-5 popped up. Then I started to learn about this program. So, then I didn't know where to start. So I went on USCIS website and I tried to look for projects over there. But all I found was all those regional center names. So that's kind of like the beginning. Then I started to talk to many more people. I reached out to people like, hey, do you know anyone know EB-5? So then there were lawyers, representatives from regional centers. I talked to a lot of them. And throughout the process, I was continuing doing my own research and study on the program. So I guess just as time went on, I was able to understand the program a little bit more. And I kind of I had a pool of maybe 20 projects. Then I narrowed them down to 3 or 4 of them. Then at that point, I decided to visit them in person. Those are projects that I was really, really interested in. So this is kind of the more how I did it from beginner to actually investing, and also like I always tell other people. EB-5 is a business investment, even though it has the immigration elements in it, but at the end of the day, it's a business investment. And actually, just a few days ago, I have a friend who's interested in EB-5 right now. He told me actually he doesn't care about the capital payback. All he wants is just the green card. I told him, hey, you got to think the other way. If you can successfully get your money back, that probably means your green card will be no problem. So I always tell people, hey, it's a business investment, so you should look at the project from the business investment perspective. So there are a lot of more technical side of things that I also used. I'll be happy to share more specifics about my project if you want to hear that. Yeah.
Now, you said you had about 20 projects that you were looking at one point.
Yeah.
I know that what I hear from a lot of my investors, what's most overwhelming for them is the documentation that comes along with each project and going through that documentation. Is that something you did in detail for each of these 20 projects, or did you kind of do a brief overview and then narrow it down?
It's a ladder. It's a ladder. But I make sure I talk to every one of them. Either it's their lawyers or people from the project side. There are many ways I will filter people. I would say, for example, I would call the project, because their project looks interesting, and I would call them, and there was a time that someone picked up the phone and told me all the guarantees. He said, "Hey, we can guarantee your green card. We can guarantee a payback." So that for me is just a no-no. No matter how interesting the project might look to me, as soon as you said that to me, I would just hang up. Not literally hang up the phone, but politely end the conversation. But it would not be my consideration anymore. But yes, for all the projects, some projects they even FedEx overnight their business proposal to me, and I will take a brief look. And I guess, I would consider a lot of factors. For example, my own project, at the end of the day, the one I chose was the one that made most sense to me. So overall, I like to hear a sensible business investment story. So let me just share with you, a little background about my project. So it was a life science and technology park project for in Miami, and by the university, not like the location is right by University of Miami. So the reason why I found it very interesting was because I know Miami was only second to Houston, being one of the largest medical hub in the country, and I know University of Miami have a very good medical school, and it just makes sense to have a type of building over there. It's not like just another apartment building in in a giant city. So it made sense. It looks to me, there's something they need. So this kind of like a thinking that guided me at the beginning process. I wanted a very reasonable business story to start with. So.
Great. And obviously your project was successful and you were able to get your investment back. How long did that take for you to ultimately get your investment back?
Actually, everything about my project is on time, So I put in my application in late January of 2011. So I got my money back in April 2015. So everything was just on time. So I didn't have to wait extensive, long period of time for my money to come back. And my green card, well, of course, at the time, came to me very, very quickly. So it was like October 2011. I got my green card. So everything was just on the schedule. Basically what's on that website or the guideline of the project of EB-5. That's what exactly happened to me. So it just went perfect.
So Lance, University of Miami is actually near and dear to Preeya's heart because she went to law school there.
Oh, nice.
But I wanted to ask you, in terms of you doing the due diligence on Google and being in the U.S., do you think you have a different experience than some students maybe being in China and doing their research on Baidu on a completely different system?
For sure. I would definitely say yes. So I would say actually all the tactics, if I may say, in China might not work for me. Personally, I don't like those huge events, just throw on like a party, like, presentation, have all these people, go upstairs, go on the stage and talk to the investors. I don't really like that. But personally, I really want to person to person, a smaller group. I would ask all the questions I like. And also because I studied in the United States, so I kind of understand, I was business majored. So I kind of know, the business world is like here, or the law here. I have a personal experience with the law here. So I don't have maybe like unreasonable expectations from for certain things. I know, we have rule of law here, so you can only do so much. You can never guarantee something outside of the scope. So I have all those in mind. So I would say definitely yes, and also on Google versus Baidu, there are much more direct information, and they're all in English, which I think is very, very important. So and also, like I said, I flew to Miami. I met everyone over there. I was able to communicate with them in English myself. So I guess it just takes a lot of like the foreign or exotic, element, for me, but maybe versus for investors back in China, yeah, things are a little different, I would say.
And I think, Lance, maybe for our audience, they may not know just the difference between, the sales process or the investment process. In some countries, when you're talking to a regional center or project, you're speaking one-on-one, because in many countries, people don't feel comfortable letting other people know that they want to migrate to the U.S. or they're leaving. In some countries, legally, they don't want to create any problems in the local country they're in, let's say Iran or Turkey or some countries like that. And then, in China, the sales process is different, where people go into a large event with 200-300 other people, and, they hear a presentation and they hear from tax experts and they hear from immigration experts, and then they decide whether they're going to pick that project or if they want to go to another presentation. So maybe if you don't mind just giving a background to our audience, how that process is, from your experience in China and other countries.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I did work for agent in China, so I had the full experience over there. So yeah, it's just like a party over there. We have big events, always at the 5-star hotels, and 200 or 300 people sit together and listen to maybe 3 or 4 guest speakers, who just basically teach you everything. But for me, a lot of the contents, for example, people will always go on this stage and explain to people what is EB-5. But, for me, I did that by myself on Google. So I don't think there's any more content you can add into your presentation outside of, the stuff you can already find on Google. So over there in China, is basically people tell you what is EB-5, who are we, what are our projects, why our projects are great, and why you should go with us. So I think for a few years it worked. It really did work. And also, like, it's not just not realistic for every investor to fly over here to the United States and do the things that I did. So I think in a way, it's kind of like their best option at the time. But I think I also, through the process, I feel like the investors don't really know EB-5 that well, because there's only so much you can learn from all those, events. You spend, typically they spend like 3 hours one afternoon. Then after that, if the clients or investors become interested, they will talk to the agents. Then it becomes more of a one-on-one game. And usually they will talk to the agent, the local agents in China. And if the local agents in China cannot answer all of their questions, they will invite people from the regional centers to join and kind of maybe do a more of a one-on-one pitch sometimes. So that's usually how that works in China, at least. Yeah.
Lance, it's interesting. I had a project that I funded in Texas, and there was north of 200 investors, all from China. Out of those 200 investors, I think I only had 2 site visits. And out of those 2 site visits, one of them, I had this whole tour scheduled with the head of construction to show them floor by floor how the project was going to get redeveloped. And they were not interested. They just wanted to show up and see that the building was there. And I think in their eye, they've seen so much fraud, or they've heard about so much fraud. I don't know necessarily if there was a lot of EB-5 case frauds, but there was obviously the ones in the press. They were just so scared. They wanted to see that building was actually there. And then once I showed them the building, they weren't really interested in seeing the inside of it. They just wanted to make sure the building was there.
Yeah, I don't blame them. It's if you're already in the U.S., I will highly recommend just go visit. If you're already in the U.S., just pay for your plane tickets, maybe just travel there. For me, I would love to go to Miami all the time, but I guess in Texas it would be great too. If you are in the U.S. for any investors, I would recommend go to the project site and talk to people and get a feel of the people who are going to work for you, because that's actually one of the more important elements for me. That was why my project stood out, for me at the end of the day. I talked to them. I remain friends with them even till today. I emailed them yesterday, after I came back from England, because we were always in touch, and I let them know I went to England, and, I let them know I came back. So it was at a time, in 2011, I went to Miami. I talked to each one of them, and they, like I said, they were not the people who would guarantee everything for me. They were not telling me hey, we are 100% good. The feeling I got was hey, we are highly confident in our project, and we will manage the project with our utmost care and our utmost attention to detail and responsibility. That's the type of feeling that I'm looking for. And I would, if there's something I want to share with future investors, I would say, hey, let's just focus on the fundamentals, not all those flashy, presentation or the hospitality they might show to you when you see them. Let's still get to the fundamentals. Let's look at the business proposal, and let's see how they are as person.
So you worked you worked for a migration agent in China. Was that after you went through your own EB-5 process?
Yeah. So.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, what was your role there, and what kind of things did you work on with the migration agency?
Okay. So yeah, actually I was, like I said, I was business majored. So with my green card, I was able to get a job from a Discovery Channel. So I worked in the corporate finance field for a few years. It was since 2016 that I decided to take another route, maybe just kind of like a little adventure. I look at my own resume, my own experience. I felt like EB-5 is something special. So that's kind of how it guided into this industry. So I was working for an agent in China, and I was in charge of the southern part of China, the whole region. So I was a general manager over there. So I had. So when I joined them, actually my team only had 5 people, but by the time I left, we had 23, and we expanded our region to 5 provinces. I would say at the beginning we were only 2. I had a sales team, I had the documentation team, so basically a full team. Developed during my time there.
And how was your experience, Lance? On the sales process, having been as an investor yourself and kind of explaining that process to investors?
I think that definitely helps. Well, my successful stories is basically what every EB-5 investors wants to have, even though I'm not sure if they can keep the schedule so on time as mine. I got everything. I got my money back on the 5-year time frame. But still, they love to see someone who went through the process, and successfully went through the process. So that's always something they want to get from me. With all those filings, 526, and and then all that. So, like I said, I was a general manager over there. Actually, in terms of selling the projects, or like what we say, closing the deals, I was never that great at it. I have to admit, because for me, I love sharing my experience with them. But at the end of the day, because I was an investor myself, I always feel like that should be your decision. I'm gonna share with you why it helped me. I will share with you why I think EB-5 might work for you or your kids in the United States if they decide to stay here. I can always share that experience with them, from my own perspective. But at the end of the day, I respect their own individual decision. So when I was working for the agent in China, it was almost it was always like I would talk to the clients, but I don't really necessarily discuss all those deal closing with them. It's my sales team. So that's when they came in, or my sales team, they will come in and talk to the investors. And if they need a final push, or the investor needed a confident boost, that's the time I would step in. Or the other way around, I will talk to the investors first, then I will hand the clients to the sales team. So that's usually how we did it at the time.
And you worked for a developer as well. How was that experience? And was it a developer that was also involved in EB-5?
Yes, they are. So that was after I left the agent. I left with some ideas in my mind, because that was already 2018. So we all know by that time, things are a lot different. Even in 2017, I was trying to tell people, all kinds of people, we need to do things differently, and we need to look at Chinese market differently. But to be honest with you, very few people actually listened at the time. So I left the company with a few ideas in my mind. I found this developer because they also want to do EB-5, and actually they want to have their own regional center. So for them, they will have more freedom on all the details. So that's kind of like what I wanted to, so for me, maybe I could implement some of my ideas into their projects. So that was the basic thought process. But I would say, for a developer to run a RC is quite difficult. They need to have all types of person in place, and they did adopt some of my ideas, some of my suggestions, and I told them, China should not be your focus at that point. You should really go out to other countries in Asia or in other side of the world. So basically that was my experience as a developer.
So Lance, a lot of our audience, members of Congress specifically, if they're watching, they have this misconception of what a typical EB-5 investor is. I think, in a lot of the financial press, they call it, cash for visas, or, this is a millionaire program. And, they don't necessarily understand who the average EB-5 investor is. Do you mind just taking a minute explaining, your background, and then, what you think of an average EB-5 investor, and not necessarily this typecast that they're putting over what a typical EB-5 investor, or who the typical EB-5 investor is?
Yeah. So I was including myself. Most of the investors that I know from China, they're middle-class people. They are not really that high up there. Most of them can do the investment because of the real estate bubble in China. So including me, we just sold a property that that brought us enough money to do the project. And that's the same case for a lot of investors. The most common way, for the source of fund was selling a property. And at least for my all the clients I worked with. So they are not. When I saw the some title put it red carpet for rich people. I know it's not true. Well, it could be true for some people, but not all of them. And there are so many investors that I know, they actually put themselves on a lot of financial stress. That's another reason why I did not want to push them to make the EB-5 investment decision. Because, like I said, they have money, but their money are, in their properties. So they either sell the property or take a loan out of the property. So I would say it's not typically, a really like a mega million rich people, you would think of. It's really not what a lot of people think this, what this program is doing for certain type of people. It's really more of a middle class program, to be honest.
And what is you know a lot of EB-5 investors that are your peers and friends, and then as an agent you work with a lot of EB-5 investors. What is the average cross section of an investor? What is their net worth? What is their occupation? How do they look like as an investor for our audience to understand what a typical EB-5 investor is?
Most of the people I work for, they just have a regular job. I would say they have a regular job. I know like factory owners or company owners, they have money to spare. But a lot of people I work with, they have regular jobs. They're doctors, maybe they work for some certain company. But like I said, they might have 2 or 3 properties in China. And if they're lucky, they have properties in Beijing, Shanghai, or Shenzhen. One property is enough for them to do EB-5, and most of them are doing EB-5 for their kids because their kids are basically like me. They came here as international students, and they wanted to stay here, and they did not want to go through the H-1B lottery and the super long waiting process. So it made sense for them. So I would say most of them are, I would say maybe not a little bit above average or above average, income earners in China who have multiple properties. Most of them like 2 or 3. So.
And Lance, there's 2 different mindsets in Congress. One that says, this is a millionaire program and blah, blah, blah. The other mindset says, the EB-5, should be a premium country and it should be a minimum $1 million investment. But, what did that $1 million or the 900,000 switch, do to, essentially affordability for the middle class or for the, little bit above middle class investors from China?
I think it will filter out a lot of people that have already invested, that I know, it would have filtered them out. That's for sure. Because like I said, some of them, they put themselves on a little bit of financial stress by investing in EB-5. If that minimum was 900,000, probably not in the US. Probably they would look to maybe like Portugal or, some European programs. So, I think 900,000, I understand it though. I always thought about it because, $500,000 was set in 1990. So if we only adjust for inflation, in 2020, it shouldn't be $500,000. That's my only honest opinion. And by raising the minimum, filtering out some investors, in my mind though, it's okay because, like I said, it's a little bit stretch for you to invest $500,000. Maybe you should not do it. That's just like, that's because from my own experience, I met so many investors, myself. When I see them, they put the money in. Now they are in the long ways. It's just too much risk, and it's not really worth it anymore. So I think raising the minimum to a certain degree, I think it's a good move. But we can always have conversation and argue what the minimum should be. So.
I thank you for coming and talking about your story, because with my investors that I speak to on a daily basis, the number one thing is that they want to speak to someone who's been through the process and who can advise them on the same. Do you have any piece of advice, if there's one piece of advice you would give to potential EB-5 investors who are thinking about the program, what would that advice be?
I think right now, I would say you should know the whole thing. By whole thing, I mean, back in 2011, for me, basically was by the book. So in 2011, I was told maybe in 8 or 9 months time, you will get your green card. And that was what happened to me. And I was told EB-5 is supposedly a 5-year investment. And I got my money back basically on the 5-year mark. So now today, because things are way more complicated, no matter where you're from China, India, Vietnam, I would tell them, hey, get an idea, how much your temporary green card petition, how long that's going to take. And, after that, when you're going to get your green card, take all the timeline down. And on top of that, the next step, your permanent green card, then your capital repayment, have everything laid out. Have everything laid out with as much information you can have at the moment, and add in some variables, because we know the situation is fluid right now. Everything could change, especially for your country. Maybe like for a certain country, they shouldn't worry too much. For example, Russia, maybe things will stay pretty much stable for them. But if you're from Vietnam, there are some variables. You have maybe they're always a big, great example of China you can look at. So you should take everything into consideration and plan basically your future accordingly. Does that work for your family? Does it work for your kids? And I think with all the mental preparation in mind, maybe that's the best way to go. That's more from the whole process, the whole thing perspective. I mean, in terms of specific investment decision, a lot of people are more of expert than I am. So yeah.
So Lance, I know you invested back in 2011, where the processing times were still shorter, and you had a pretty good experience. But I know you've dealt with the USCIS as an agent, and both on the developer side. What is the attitude, or what is the thought process that investors have about USCIS when they think of USCIS and how our processing works, or how timelines work?
Actually, I did not have any personal experience with USCIS until I went to the citizenship interview. That was my first time actually sat down and talked to USCIS people. And actually that little experience, that 10-minute interview, kind of gave me a perspective how things work over there. So whenever we think about U.S. government, maybe because of Hollywood movies, you would think it's all fancy, everybody in suit, and maybe they're on it all the time, every minute, every second. But I would like to, at least from my own experience, I think that's something USCIS might want to improve on as well. Maybe more personnel, and they're more training on their own side on how EB-5 works, and how to prove certain petitions. I think that there are things they can improve themselves. So as for the investors, I would tell them, like, hey, manage your expectation. Manage your expectation. First of all, the whole system in the United States, the legal system in the United States was designed to move things slowly. This is very different from people maybe like from China. Usually whenever government decides on anything, things move super fast. But here it's different. The process that was designed to move things slowly. Out of our own political belief or the considerations. So it's different over here. So I would definitely hope, like I said, the USCIS could improve on their own. But yeah, then again, the investors, I think it's good for them to know a little bit about the legal process, how Congress work. That's why I enjoyed it. I enjoyed one of your episodes so much, where you guys discussed how things work on the Capitol Hill. I think that's very, very useful information for the investors to know. So then again, it's better with that information. It will be easier for them to manage their expectations and help their decision-making process.
So, one of the topics I wanted to touch on with you is education, because a lot of individuals who are thinking about the EB-5 program, a great number of individuals who are thinking about it, are doing this for the education of their children. You mentioned you were already in school in the US, and now, as you mentioned to me before we started the program today, that you are back in school now and earning your master's degree. So can you tell us about your experience with the US education system, how you think it's superior to other education systems, if that is what you think, and how becoming how it's different now that you're a permanent resident, your educational experience, how it may have been different from when you were an international student?
Yeah, it's definitely very, very different. And like I told you before the program, I said, now I'm a father of two, and I would tell my kids, if you guys want to do masters or some if you guys want to do master's degree, maybe go out and work a few years, then do it, because like you said, it totally made more sense to me. To be honest with you, for me. And I know for a lot of Chinese students, at least, we came here for master's degrees right out after college because we wanted to come to the U.S. That's actually the number one reason. We were not here really for master of something. I think the priority number one for me at the time, I knew I wanted to come to the United States of America, and frankly, that was not the major that I was interested in. But now with my working experience, I wanted to come back to school, and I applied to the one school I was very, very, very interested in. Luckily I got in, and now with I'm back in school with my working experience. I was able to pick courses that I like. Versus 12 years ago, I basically just take units required to get the degree. So it's very different. In terms of, which education system is superior, I could only speak from China and US perspective, because that's only the two kinds of education system that I went through. For me, I would prefer the US education system for sure. Because I think just the range of subjects you can touch upon, and the freedom to choose whatever you like. It's I think I felt like I learned much more here in the United States than in China. That's my honest view. Maybe some of the viewers will not like it, but that's only my personal experience, my personal perspective. Even for my first master's degree in business, for that 2 years in American business school, I learned more than the 4 years I spent in China in a Chinese college studying the same major. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on education.
So I just wanted to clarify something. Preeya, not only did Lance get his permanent residency, but he's also a U.S. citizen. So Lance, I know that was a proud moment for you.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us when you got paid back on your project, when you got your green card, and when you became a U.S. citizen?
Oh, yeah. So, so like I said, everything was on point for me. So basically 8.5 months into my, my petition, I got my permanent, got my temporary green card. Then after I hold my temporary green card for 4 years and 9 months, I applied for my permanent one, and that got approved very quickly. And right after that, I got paid back. So basically everything was on March. The whole thing was done for me in the 5-year time frame. So I became a U.S. citizen in 2017. Actually, the whole application started in 2016. And it was because, Trump became president. So all of a sudden, a lot of people wanted to become U.S. citizens. So the whole waiting time took a little bit longer. So I think I waited like a year and a month for my ceremony, the final step. So yeah, in October 2017, I became a U.S. citizen. So the past, 2020 presidential election is actually my first time voting in the presidential election here in the United States. Yeah, I am very, very proud. This is something I chose to do. Nobody forced it upon me. And I only do it when I believe in it. I wasn't becoming a U.S. citizen to enjoy all the travel freedom, just because, with the U.S. passport, I don't need to deal with visa anymore for a lot of countries. It was really because I loved my experience here. Like I even shared with a lot of Chinese investors, I feel like my time in the U.S. made me a better person. So, and my kids were born here. They are going to grow up here. So I feel like, yeah, of course, I should care about what's going on in this country. So I was glad to, make that decision and become a U.S. citizen and find a sense of belonging, and, and also adapt a new self. So yeah, that was 2017. And after that, I'm just a U.S. citizen now.
Well, Lance, I became a U.S. citizen in 1997, but I just wanted to say that we're very lucky to have you as one of our citizens.
Thank you.
So, Lance, you worked as a developer, and then now you pursued Carnegie Mellon. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about your experience, why you decided to go back to school?
Yeah. So I might have touched upon it a little bit. I left the agency because I felt like, for the developer, maybe I had, from the developer, maybe I had a little bit more freedom to implement some of my ideas. But, and also at the same time, I respect business decisions. When I told them, we should move away from China or focus less on China, I think that was a hard sell for every company at the time because everybody was seeing great success over the years in China. So it was hard. So I think I tried to make changes in this industry. Maybe that's too big of words to make, through my own ways. Like I said, I persuaded the real estate developers to increase the interest payment to the investors because they already own their own regional center and they have the personnel in China, so they didn't need an agency. So I persuaded them to increase the interest payment to the investors. So that's, you kind of get where I'm heading to. I kind of want to do more for the investors. So long story short, it's hard, it's just hard. So it was EB-5 that pushed me back to school. My original thought was through a good university, their platform, I would be able to communicate my thinking process, my ideas to the Congress more directly, or people who are really on the top designing everything. I would want to tell them what's going on. I would want to maybe help better the process. That's like a very big, giant idea, but this is basically what pushed me back to school. Now I'm in the public policy program, so I learned a lot about the U.S. political system, how law is passed, and all that. And I would say I enjoyed it and learned a lot. And also I became much more realistic. Like I said, I learned things are designed to move slow on Capitol Hill. So yeah, I would say, I love my experience. I don't regret a day coming back to school. I still have one more year to go, and I'm gonna use every single day of it to work towards my goal. Maybe it won't be exactly the way I wanted before I came back to school, but hopefully I can still find a way.
So with everything going on, you obviously know everything that's been going on with EB-5 over the past few months. A lot of changes happening, a lot of potential changes happening. What potential advice would you give to U.S. Congress in terms of the EB-5 program if there were some changes that you wanted to see?
Good question. Good question. Actually, for U.S. Congress, I will speak from another perspective because I also listened to I joined some conference calls, maybe USCIS. No, I mean IUSA organized, a few weeks ago. When I heard people saying they are explaining to U.S. lawmakers, it's this program has economic benefits. They always will try to speak from the academic, it's better for the economy. It's costing U.S. taxpayers no money, to bring in all the investments and create jobs and all that. I like that, but at the same time, I feel a little offended because for me, it's more than a program about the economy. It's a program actually would not be successful without the investors. So I would want them, whenever they talk to the Congress, it's about the local economy for sure, but at the same time, the congressmen they must know, what we are going through right now, the amount of pain it might have brought to the investors, who have created local jobs here. And like I said, I know people who put themselves on financial stress by investing in EB-5. I hope the Congress should know this type of stories as well. And also, like I have lived here in this country for 13 years now. 13 years now. I know how everything works. I know it will be hard. It will be a hard sell or a more difficult sell because EB-5, not like DACA or any other immigration issue, optic-wise, it does nothing for the lawmakers. And it does nothing for their constituents. So there's really no pull for the U.S. Congress. And that's something I hope the whole industry can think of a way, find a way to attach EB-5 to a greater cause. In the process, like I said, I want the congressmen to know there are people suffering, investors suffering overseas waiting for their green card. That's the toughest part for me, because I understand people's argument about DACA kids here in this country, and I fully support that. But at the same time, because I'm in this industry, I was an investor myself. I saw everything. I personally know so many investors. I know they are also put into a very, very bad situation by an existing U.S. law. So I would, me personally, if I see a congressman, my focus will always be on top of the economy. There are people you need to care about. find a way one way or the other. I'm glad to hear people are talking about the bridges, the short-term bridges. If you EB-5 investors, they interviewed me, I think back in 2018 or 2017, they still have an article about that interview on their website. I talked about the short-term bridges back then, advanced parole, EAD and all that. I said that back in the days. And I'm glad to hear people are still talking about it. Hopefully that means people are still pushing it, because I know things move slow. So hopefully at some point we can get to that. So yeah, and also it's kind of frustrating for me. It still hasn't happened. So yeah, that's basically, I really do want the U.S. lawmakers to consider all the perspective. Because me personally, I don't see anything wrong about investment immigration. The United States is not the only country who is doing investment immigration. Every major developed country has their own investment immigration program, or a developing country. There's nothing wrong with that. And like we discussed earlier, it's not really a red carpet for rich people only. So it's not really that bad of a object, in my opinion. So I think it's a good program. It has all the benefits, but the U.S. lawmakers just need to take all perspective into consideration a little bit more, in my opinion.
Lance, that's very helpful. I mean, like you said, I think there's a lot of misconceptions that this is a green card by the red carpet for Chinese millionaires, but in reality, it's middle class, maybe upper middle class. There are some high net worth individuals, but that's not the majority. The majority is people like you. People are students who borrowed money from their parents to do this to get their own share of the American dream. And I can tell you, we have negotiations behind the scenes on the future of the EB-5 program. One of the things we're pushing is advanced parole, because these investors, whether from China, India, Vietnam, or wherever, they have done exactly what they were supposed to do. Congress asked them to put money, create jobs, and create economic activity. They did that because we have a slow immigration process, because we have visa backlogs. These people have done exactly what they're supposed to do, and they're sitting there to have to wait 5, 10, 15 years to get their residency. So the solution is to give them advanced parole, to allow them to come here and start jobs and go into school. And that is something we're pushing for. But I could tell you that I'm hearing that the political climate may not be there right now, given China-U.S. relations, to get that done. And although we're hearing that, we're still pushing for that, because politics aside, this has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with the people that did what they're supposed to be doing, and the government hasn't done their side of the bargain. And we agree with you. Any final thoughts, Preeya?
No, I think you said it just right, and I think Lance did as well. This is about the immigrants, it's about the people, and I think there definitely needs to be some evolution in the program and some changes made to offer greater stability to these people who, like you said, Abteen, have done what they're supposed to do in terms of the program, and they just want what's owed to them in return, which is the green card and the ability to come to the U.S. and work and live in the U.S. So I definitely agree on that front. So that was very helpful, Lance. Thank you.
Thanks, Lance. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. I think our audience would really appreciate your insights. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here and sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Glad to be here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.